These are the 1979 to 1980 Grumman Flxible 870s, the sole Grumman Flxible 870s, and the most controversial buses of New York City Transit in all time. Now their fleet numbers range from PA1 to 552, while the MaBSTOA fleet numbers range from PA97 to 910, with 100 aka 199 being a 1979 demo, and PA1 to 910 being 1980 models. So, without further ado, let's hit the list of depots that received these Grumman Flxible 870s. This is going to be quite a list, so here we go. So PA1 to 23, along with 201 to 255, along with 453 to 475, were delivered to, believe it or not, they were delivered to East New York Depot, while PA24 to 50, along with 256 to 231, along with 476 to 502, were delivered to Albert Park Depot. PA51 to 65, along with 393 to 422, along with 503 to 515, were delivered to Castleton Depot, while PA66 to 69, along with 423 to 452, along with 516 to 525, were delivered to Edgewater Depot, which was shut down in 1983 after one of its piers collapsed into the water, taking 2 GM fish bowls on loan from WMATA halfway into the water with it. Though they planned on rehabilitating the depot, Edgewater was permanently abandoned in 1985 after it was proven to be structurally unsafe to be a bus depot. Anywho, back to the Grumman 870s. PA70 to 77, along with 322 to 342, along with 526 to 533, were delivered to Fresh Pond Depot, while PA78 to 82, along with 343 to 355, as well as 534 to 538, were delivered to Flushing Depot, present-day Casey Stengel Depot. PA83 to 85, along with 356 to 363, along with 539 to 541, were delivered to Jamaica Depot, while PA86 to 91, along with 364 to 380, along with 542 to 547, were delivered to Queens Village Depot. PA92 to 96, along with 381 to 392, along with 548 to 552, were delivered to 126th Street Depot, which has been closed in 2015, while PA97 to 101, along with 601 to 613, along with 811 to 816, were delivered to Hudson Pier Depot, which was closed in 2003. PA102 to 106, along with 614 to 627, along with 817 to 822, were delivered to 54th Street Depot, which was closed in 1992 and demolished between 1996 and 97, while PA107 to 116, along with 628 to 654, along with 823 to 835, were delivered to 132nd Street Depot, present-day Manhattanville Depot. PA117 to 130, along with 655 to 692, along with 836 to 853, were delivered to 146th Street Depot, present-day Mother Clara Hale Depot, while PA131 to 140, along with 693 to 719, along with 854 to 866, were delivered to Amsterdam Depot, which was closed in 2003, then reopened when Mother Clara Hale Depot was closed for rehabilitation in 2008. Then it got canned in 2010 due to budget cuts. Anyway, PA141 to 160, along with 720 to 770, along with 867 to 890, were delivered to Kingsbridge Depot, while last but not least, PA161 to 175, along with 771 to 810, along with 891 to 910, were delivered to Coliseum Depot, which is now the present site of the present-day West Farms Depot. Now, 553 to 565 were ordered by the NYCTA for a private bus line called Avenue B and East Broadway Transit Corporation. But however, the line was shut down before the units were delivered, so they were diverted to New York City Transit. And 631 is a noticeable unit, as it was the only 870 to be equipped with Busorama signs, or as we transit enthusiasts call them, bat wings. Also, one thing you may notice is the suffix PA before the fleet numbers. For example, PA117. That's because the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, otherwise known as PAMYNJ, helped the MTA finance the purchases of these buses. Now I know you OG transit fans are going to love this, and at the same time, I want the younger generation transit fans to know that this review will mainly be a history trip for you guys. So everybody fasten your seatbelts, because it's time to go back to the late 70s and early 80s. So in 1979, New York City Transit made an order to Flxible for what would have been Flxible's largest order of Grumman 870s, with 837 buses in total, which was worth a whopping $107 million. The fleet consisted of two models. For example, PA1 to 175, along with 201 to 552, as well as 601 to 910, were 53102-6-1 models, with the 53 indicating the length of the bus, and the 102 indicating that the bus is 102 inches wide, and the 6 indicating that these units signify the use of the Detroit Diesel 6V71 engine, which sounds like this. 553 to 565 were 53096-8-1 models, with the 53 indicating the length of the bus, and the 96 indicating that the buses are 96 inches wide, and the 8 indicating that these buses signify the use of the Detroit Diesel 8V71 engine, which sounds like this. The Grumman 870s were supposed to be the buses of the future, with new innovations and features that were not shown on previous buses, such as 2x1 transverse seating, air conditioning, PA systems with rod-type microphones that were operated with a foot switch, and Motorola two-way radios with rooftop antennas covered with fiberglass hoods. Kinda makes the bus look like it has a hairpiece on top of it, doesn't it? Also, these featured right outside rearview mirrors, hoodlum lights, and were the first buses to feature illuminator electric destination signs in the blue and white paint scheme, and they also featured a vertical roof exhaust pipe. But as soon as they thought everything was all good, tragedy struck. This is where the controversy started. On November 18, 1980, the A-frame of an 870 cracked while in service. This was later followed by 39 additional 870s that also suffered from this as well. Even though there were no injuries or accidents, the TA was alarmed. On November 19, 1980, the 870s were temporarily withdrawn from service until they were all inspected for this defect. Though not all the 870s had cracked frames, on December 20th, 1980, the TA took all the 870s out of service. Now, New York City Transit wasn't the only TA to have this issue. Here's some vintage news clips regarding these 870s from the early 80s. Check them out.
Quite a few years since any of these commuters rode anywhere on a school bus, let alone to work. But this week, in many of Chicago's suburbs, it was a school bus or nothing.
Oh, I love them. They make me feel like a kid again.
They're better than nothing.
I think it stinks.
It's the latest chapter in the Grumman Flxible bus saga. 205 now grounded in Chicago, more than 200 out of service in Los Angeles, and an emergency fleet from Washington called in to replace New York's 600 buses. The story goes back to 1977, when Grumman, the same company that built the lunar module that landed man on the moon, introduced what was supposed to be the bus of the future, modern, fuel-efficient, and comfortable. The federal government kicked in $30 million so cities could buy 2,600 of these so-called flexible buses. But the space-age technology soon had its problems.
The back doors fell off, the front panels have fallen off, the front doors won't open, won't close.
But it was cracked frames that grounded almost half the fleet, a problem the company says is not a safety hazard.
We've never had any fuel spill or a fire. There's no electrical system involvement. Nothing falls out of the bus. The whole bus just sags a little and stops.
Now, Grumman says repair centers have been set up in 3 cities, with the work at Grumman's expense to begin next week. Grumman and General Motors are the only manufacturers of mass transit buses in the country. And if Grumman can't iron out the problems with the Flxible, then cities needing new buses will have to turn to GM, or very possibly to foreign bus makers. Hardly good news for a motor vehicle industry already in crisis. June Massell, ABC News, Chicago.
In the news, the bus of the future goes bust. They were supposed to help carry commuters into the 21st century, but in many big cities, these buses aren't carrying anyone, anywhere. We'll be back with busted buses. And now, some troubled buses in the news. They're called advanced design buses with sleek, squared-off bodies and big, dark windows. They're supposed to be more comfortable, easier to get onto and off of, and they use less fuel than older models. But they have big problems. In several cities, officials have pulled many of these new buses off the road. In Houston, the air conditioners kept breaking down. In Atlanta, there were also brake problems and cracks in the bus frames. New York City pulled more than 600 of the new buses off the road after cracks were found in support frames on many of them, and one bus's engine fell out. In Los Angeles, more than 200 buses were out of service because of cracks. These buses are made by the Grumman Corporation, the same company that built the lunar lander, which put men on the moon. Grumman has promised to fix the faulty buses, but there's a slew of legal problems. Meanwhile, officials in New York had to figure out a way to ease the crunch caused by losing 600 buses. They got some help from Washington, D.C., which is leasing New York 100 buses it had stopped using. Those buses made the trip to New York last Saturday, and some were put to work just before Christmas. I'm Christopher Glenn with Bus Problems in the News.
So as a result, New York City Transit sued Grumman, claiming that the Grumman 870s were not strong buses, while Grumman counterclaimed that New York City's terrain was in substandard condition. In other words, they claimed that it was the potholes in the roads that caused the frames to crack. Lawsuits soon followed, and the TA canceled its option order of additional Grumman 870s. Though Grumman initially claimed that the 870 had been well designed, properly maintained, and passed all of its standard durability tests, an investigation revealed that Rohrer may have misrepresented to Grumman how thoroughly Rohrer had tested the 870. Please keep in mind that Rohrer patented the Grumman 870's design before Grumman acquired the company. So Grumman then sued Rohrer, however, the case was dropped. So at that point, all Grumman can do was implement an emergency A-frame retrofit program to repair not only New York City Transit's Grumman 870s, but the Grumman 870s from other TAs across the country that suffered from this problem. Retrofits were also performed immediately on all the Grumman 870s that were still being manufactured, and all Grumman 870s built after December 1980 received an A-frame upgrade while they were still on the assembly line. And once this was all done, the Grumman 870s returned to the streets of New York City, and the leased buses from Washington, D.C. were sent back for a well-deserved retirement. Although Grumman had held up its end of all the warranty obligations, the nearly 30-year relationship between New York City Transit and Flxible was done. Soon after that, even more tragedy struck. On February 3, 1984, a MaBSTOA unit burned and was destroyed. Even though there were no injuries or fatalities, the fire was claimed to have been caused by a missing rear shock absorber. What happened was, the fire was caused by a shock absorber mounting pin that permitted an attached panel to bring both electrical wiring and adjacent fuel lines together. New York City Transit sued Grumman again, with Grumman pinning the fire on poor maintenance on New York City Transit's part. Then, at the time, Mayor Ed Koch, God rest his soul, publicly proclaimed that the Grumman 870s were junk. And with that said, MTA Chairman David Gunn had the 4-year-old Grumman Flxible 870s taken out of service for good. For a year and a half, the 870s sat in the Brooklyn Navy Yard until Flxible bought the buses from the Transit Authority. They were later refurbished and resold to New Jersey Transit, Queen City Metro in Cincinnati, and Autoridad Metropolitana de Autobuses de Puerto Rico. And they ran these Grummans to the ground, with no problems whatsoever. Not to mention that the other TAs, including the private bus lines and Long Island Bus, did the same thing with their Grummans after the issue was rectified with theirs. And they made New York City Transit look like complete idiots at the end. Which then leads to my opinion. Now, I personally think that the Grumman 870s were good buses overall, but honestly, I think that New York City Transit exaggerated the whole issue. And here's why I say that. The other transit authorities that had this problem got their Grummans fixed, and they continued to run up until the mid-90s. But New York City Transit didn't. This also leads me to think that New York City Transit might have done it to boost the RTS's popularity. Because, if you think about it, had the Grumman 870s lasted a little longer than they did, I personally don't think New York City Transit would have gotten as much RTSs. But hey, that's just my thought. And no, I am not saying that because I'm an RTS fan, so don't go saying, oh, you're just saying that because you love the RTSs. Because really, it's just a thought. Anywho, I personally like the Grumman 870 because of its overall look and design. Next to the RTSs, the Grummans are another favorite of mine and many other transit enthusiasts. I think if David Gunn and Ed Koch weren't so quick to sue Grumman and cause controversy, I think they probably would have lasted up until at least the 90s. But hey, that's just my thought. It's really sad overall that the Grumman Flxible 870 had a messed up background for New York City Transit, but for the other TAs, I'm sure they served them really well. So as for these Grumman Flxible 870s, despite the controversy, they're gone, but definitely not forgotten, as we have several surviving units such as 236 in the museum fleet, 401 is preserved at the New Jersey Transit Heritage Center as 1596, and 465 is privately owned by the CBOA as 2089. So with that said, this is Kal-El, thanking you guys for watching.